Negotiators from the United States, Canada, and Mexico would be trying to conclude an agreement this weekend. We thought that this would be a perfect time for Congressman Dick Gephardt to give his views from the congressional perspective of how the arrangement looks. Congressman Gephardt obviously needs no introduction to this group. You all know that he's been in the Congress since 1976. He became Majority Leader, the second highest post in the House, in 1989. He's, of course, chaired the House Trade and Competitiveness Task Force for a long time. And relevant to the current political season, he was the founding... That was not a comment, Congressman Gephardt. He was a founding chairman of the Democratic Leadership Council back in 1985. From which, of course, the new leadership of the party in the current national campaign has come. Indeed, the presidential and vice presidential candidates were with Congressman Gephardt last Wednesday in St. Louis at the culmination of that part of the campaign effort. When Dick Gephardt spoke to our group back in September of 1991, many of you who were here will remember, he proposed initiatives toward the former Soviet Union that soon became national policy. He proposed new trade legislation that, with some changes, became H.R. 51 that passed the House recently. So it's obvious that when Dick Gephardt speaks, the trade policy community, as well as the country as a whole, listens. And today, his remarks on the NAFTA negotiations, his perspective, and his perception of them, I think will be a critical addition to the national debate coming out of Mexico City yesterday and again today.
45 years ago, America's mission in foreign affairs possessed clarity and an essential discipline. The villain was communism, and our answer was quite clearly containment. At that moment in history, while America had allies and alliances, no nation was capable of both organizing the world community and marshaling its own political, social, and economic institutions to achieve that goal, except the United States. And this we did. First alone in equipping Turkey and Greece to fight communist subversion, and then in concert with others in trouble spots across the globe. To this fight, we brought unique strengths, in particular, a growing and dominant economy, and far-sighted leadership that rallied our people to this critical cause. After nearly half a century of sacrifice and struggle, a new world has been born. We are preeminent in military might, but stand on a crowded stage of economic actors whose strength is growing and in some sectors exceeding our own. America, once the greatest producer, investor, and exporter, now leads the world in consumption, indebtedness, and imports. We advanced U.S. interest in the wake of World War II by protecting European democracy and reconstruction. Today, our mission is equally momentous: how to realize America's national interest in the global economy under vastly changed circumstances for us and the world. From Europe to the Pacific Rim, nations are organizing their economies for international leadership by forging partnerships among their governments, corporations, and workers, and by recognizing that America has no strategy for rebuilding our economy. Our competitors are getting ahead, and we are falling behind. And our greatest weakness is the inability of our current leadership to comprehend these new challenges and rally our people to understand and overcome these new circumstances. Nowhere is this more apparent than in our current negotiations with Mexico and Canada to reach a North American Free Trade Agreement, commonly known now as NAFTA. Roughly 1 year ago, Congress authorized the President to proceed with trade negotiations under the so-called fast-track trade negotiating authority. This extraordinary grant of power was necessary, according to the President, for him to negotiate this trade agreement. Congress gave President Bush this authority based on a number of commitments that he made both in letter and in spirit. I supported and voted for fast track because I believe the President should have the chance to negotiate with Canada and Mexico to advance the cause of free and fair trade in our hemisphere. And at the time, I offered a resolution in the House of Representatives, which passed overwhelmingly, to memorialize the President's commitments and make clear what Democrats expected from the negotiation and the President. In trade negotiations of the post-Cold War era, we must focus not just on the needs of America's corporations, but on the needs of workers who were left behind in the 80s and on the quality of life and standard of living of citizens on both sides of the border. Against a backdrop of a stagnant economy and declining wages, America must fight for trade policies in the global economy that foster opportunity here at home. A good free trade agreement would be in the deep self-interest of the United States and could be a powerful engine for growth throughout our hemisphere. But the goal of marrying diverse economies as the Europeans have discovered, requires agreement on a broad range of issues that have typically not been at the center of traditional trade negotiations. For months, the Bush administration has been negotiating almost nonstop to send a NAFTA agreement to Congress before the election. I have been monitoring the negotiations and the evolving document, which is still a work in progress. The draft does have some important pro-growth advantages, such as reductions in tariff barriers to trade. But especially in the NAFTA, we must look at problems such as transporter pollution, infrastructure, worker adjustment, labor and human rights. And it is these issues to which the administration has thus far paid scant attention. In fact, our trade negotiators have said these issues are primarily the responsibility of others. The private sector and the free market will be dealt with later. With time running out on the negotiation, these are the questions which must be resolved before the President signs the agreement. And that is why I am choosing to speak out today.